I wanted to mention we're talking about determinism a little bit and how even choosing a food item on a menu could be predetermined. Our daily preferences, much of our personality, things like that. But let me just say, a lot of that I'm talking about in the conditioning, right? It relates to samsara. As we free up our mind, it doesn't have to be subject to determinism, because then the true kind of free will is there. I think Nidhi's skipping the meditation today. She's got very important things to do. Well, again, this text is, I think, very powerful text, dated from the 7th century. I think some dated to the 8th or the 9th. But if I was to guess, it's not originated in those centuries, because the colophon, the little kind of tag that we have, right, on the scriptures, mentions Sri Singha and translated by Virachana. So Guru Padmasambhava was the student of, by the way, Judson, I think your video is unmuted there. So that, let me get this right, the lineage here. I don't want to mess it up. Yes, so it went Sri Singha to Padmasambhava, but there seems to be a relationship between Sri Singha and Virachana for sure. Although Virachana is sometimes called one of the 25 disciples of Guru Padmasambhava. So it really seems like under the reign of King Tristan at the time in the 8th century that there was a lot of Dharma activity happening. And these 17 original tantras seem to be part of the migration that was going on because of the Muslim invasions in what we now call India. So there seemed to be a push even earlier in the 6th and 5th centuries. There was a push up north to the Tarim Basin. The Tarim Basin is this giant desert that's north of Tibet. Really well preserved findings there, when people are allowed to excavate. Of course, it belongs to China now. Well, so they claim. But that Tarim Basin historically is so fascinating for anybody who's into history. They found shamans there, 2,000 years old or something like that, still preserved with hair. And he had a pound of weed on him, actually, that was so well preserved that you could still smoke it, they said in the article. So I'm not sure if any of those archaeologists indulged in that, but it speaks to the preservation of the desert. And not only that, if you look up the Tarim Basin mummies, I mean, they're fascinating. You can still see what these people look like from thousands of years ago. So not only, and they were considered shamans. The shaman religion or spiritual practice, probably our oldest. By the way, I mentioned Mount Tara. It's actually called the Hill of Tara. I fact-checked myself on that. And it's not in Ireland, it's in Scotland. Wait, I need to fact-check myself again. I think Scotland this time. Okay, I know it's called the Hill of Tara, and it's quite ancient, like 3000 BC or something like that. And they have all these various translations for Tara, and many of them you could probably draw a nice correlation between Tara that we see in the Dharma. So I think that's really fascinating stuff to dig into. And so I was talking about the origins of the 17 Tantras. It really looks like they just compiled them and basically tried to rescue them, like a lot of things at the time, by hiding them in Tibet or in the around the Tarim Basin, like Khotan, Kingdom of Kushtan, those areas where they say Buddha Shakyamuni traveled actually, and King Ashoka and his son, most like his son is known to travel there, but I would say King Ashoka himself also, who erected, of course, these great pillars everywhere, right? Who was a great Dharma patron. So, Sri Singhal probably rescued these, and they're part of the viharas, the little temples and the Buddhist sanctuaries that they had set up. It looks like there's a whole curriculum there, kind of like you would see freshman to senior year. That's my educated guess, okay? That there was a whole curriculum. And because the nine yanas just popped up in the 7th century, and academics really think that the Tibetans were that crafty, they just invented the nine yanas, within 100 years. I just can't buy that. I see evidence of the nine yanas way earlier, even in the time of the Buddha. But I won't go into that. Main point is there's a strong history here in these texts, and it is intertextual. And when they're citing different dohas and scriptures, then it's intertextual, which makes a nice preservation, though, of stuff that probably got destroyed because Allah wanted us to destroy it, right? God wanted us to destroy the temples, of course. God, God is angry, right? I don't know, maybe. I think if you are angry, then God is angry. But all these things that get justified in the name of God, holy crap. I feel like they haven't checked with God on those things. All right, so I hope that's an okay little background. Good enough to start reading here. I think Nidhi is ready too. She wants to hear this Punya Gyalpo, the motherly Buddha. And I believe looks like Tara or the motherly Buddha is speaking here, right? Or it could be Dorji Sempa. And maybe we could scroll up just to get context. Yeshi, could you scroll up a little bit just for us to know who's talking? Oh yeah, this is the answer to Dorje Sempa. Okay, yes, thank you. So Dorje Sempa is Vajrasattva. That's considered the Sambhoga Kaya. So you can think of Dorje Sempa as your wisdom mind. And so the Dharmakaya is your whole wisdom mind, like the very source of your wisdom. So the very source of your wisdom, Dharmakaya, is speaking to your kind of well, they call it like a child meeting the mother. So the mother's kind of speaking to the child here. All right. So even if I taught you the 3 forms of manifestation and the 6 vehicles, you would not understand them. Each of them, the teacher's 3 forms of manifestation and the 6 vehicles, is endowed with my true being in an individual fashion, and each of them is my actuation in individual fashion as form, utterance, and spirit. So that's an elegant way to put body, speech, and mind there. Utterance, spirit. Spirit is probably a Judeo-Christian impression that's put into this text rather than mind. Of course, anybody who who's pretty deep into the Dharma would probably have used mind there, but it's interesting to see spirit because maybe you can draw a correlation between other paths. I think so. The six vehicles there, I'm pretty sure they're talking about the nine yanas minus the last three, which is Ati, Anu, and Maha. So we have basically the Sutrayana vehicle there. It's the six vehicles. Shravakayana, Pratyeka Buddha, Bodhisattva Yana, Kriya Yoga Yana, Upa Yoga Yana, Charya Yoga Yana. Anyway, I think you get the main point. That's the Sutrayana. So let's see here. The individual actuation lets you see the whole. In such way, my own being is also taught. I, as the mind of perfect purity, the actuating essence of all that is pure, let emerge from me the play of the threefold world and the six categories of sentient beings, because I am actuating the dimension of the non-conceptual, and I am the existential ground, Nachin of all Buddhas. So let's these again, I'm just going to say, are packed with all kinds of metaphoric language, and you can call it twilight language too. So I'm not going to explain every single little thing, but it says me, let emerge from me the play, ropa. That's considered appearances, like the energy that we're witnessing, that we're living in. So just like a fish is in the water, we're kind of in the ropa of the threefold world. And here's also something, remember this predates Longchenpa, who was in the 13th century, where he talked about the non-conceptual in a more technical kind of form, but here the non-conceptual refers to your wisdom mind, we could call it, or that bare cognizance. It's that volumetric, fully permeating, omnipresent cognizance of your own mind, your Buddha mind, as they called it in ancient days. In modern days, maybe we could say your enlightened mind. The ground Nachin is synonymous with she or Alayavijnan in a sense of it being purified. So it says here, particularly I teach that if you are not mistaken about the pure, all acts of happiness and misery are my compassion. Ooh, that line actually gives you a lot. It shows you that we're not just being kind of unnecessarily radical about our acceptance of this life, right? Even all the so-called bad things. This is also showing that all, just like if you were dreaming, everything would be pure cognizance, pure consciousness. So even the so-called misery we may experience is pure consciousness. And those of you who are techies maybe see it like a video game. In front of your eyes on the screen, you see all these pictures, and they're very enticing and captivating. But behind it is nothing but programming. Even the images themselves are created by programming. So the backdrop of that, what's kind of the puppeteering, is the code. It's running like C++, right? And probably other languages, Visual Basic and Perl script, whatever game engines that I used to work with were in C++. So I think that you can look at it that way. This world right now, what we're seeing is one thing, but there's an entire backdrop there, right? And notice when you get involved with the programming, just like you're sitting there stuck on a game, you get stuck on all these various little things in life. And that's why I invite you, if you can, start each day. Clear your browser history, refresh. And it takes forgiving yourself, forgiving others. It does, which can be very difficult. Probably forgiving ourselves is even more tricky sometimes. We also love to harbor resentments and things like that into the next day. We don't need to torture ourselves with that or torture anybody else. So I think that's a very powerful sentence. Particularly, I teach that if you're not mistaken about the pure, primordial purity, Kadak, who's here with us today, has the name Kadak. Um, all acts of happiness and misery are my compassion. Wow, it's very, very powerful stuff. That's why I encourage everyone to do the 10-minute meditations to, immerse, if you're truly wanting to be free, to immerse into the path, because you'll be free of this kind of tormenting dichotomy. It's a duality, a good and bad, binary kind of struggle that we get in. So I, the all creating, will not teach such lore to those who adhere to the vehicle of cause and result. So those were the six vehicles. Actually, we can consider vehicles 1 through 8 causal. So if I taught them my lore as definitive, they would cast praise and slander on me, the all pure, as they assert the cause and result do exist because of good and bad acts. See, I just mentioned the good and bad dichotomy, right? It's a potent binary to be stuck into. But here I want to also mention those of you who are following the practice this deep and starting to treat reality as part of your mind, you will see how the feminine is treated in your environment. I feel like that's how we tend to treat it in our own minds, and it's very reflective. I encourage you to have your own realizations about that, but really broaden your meditation into the entire environment, okay? So, for this reason, they will not meet me, the all pure one, for a long time. Ha! But notice how she didn't say never. So I am the teacher, the all creating one, the mind of perfect purity. The mind of perfect purity is the all creating sovereign. The mind of perfect purity creates the Buddhas of the three times. The mind of perfect purity creates the sentient beings living in this threefold world. The mind of perfect purity creates what appears and exists as the animated and inanimated world. To bring the concepts of cause, result, simile, objective, and definition into agreement with this teaching, you ought to know. At the time of cause, the five great elements are created. At the time of result, the sentient beings in the threefold world are created. At the time of simile, the sky as a simile of everything is created. At the time of the meaning, the unborn is made by me as the meaning of everything. At the time of sign, the all creating mind of perfect purity is revealed. At the time of definition, the self originated awareness is taught. This is how cause, result, simile, meaning, and definition are brought into agreement with this teaching. And there's a lot to that paragraph right there. It's very understandable how these texts aren't so popular. They're very encoded. But we'll continue. By means of the mind of perfect purity, all is made. Not one thing is not made by it. The all creating's own being, the mind of perfect purity, has made all, and not one is that, excuse me, and not one is that is not made by it. There is no reason for itself to be created. My own being, the all creating one, is beyond cognition. Matakbar, Matakbar in Tibet. But I am perceived with certainty in the things I've created. By means of a longing desire, the appearance of these things is achieved, but they will perish because of their impermanent and illusory nature, a nature which is impartial and like a man born blind. Although the all creating sovereign is impartial in her creating, the senses get obstructed when they experience suffering when the six sensory objects are perceived by the six sense faculties. For this reason, the all-creating sovereign is impartial in her creation. Thus, no result does exist which could annihilate cessation and origination. Certainly, the two truths arise from this one, i.e., the mind of perfect purity. The ultimate and the conventional arises too, exist and non-exist, despite the fact that reality is created by me, the all-creating one. Therefore, the two truths do not lead to the overwhelming of cause and result. The overcoming. Yeah, interesting there, right? It says the two truths do not lead to the overcoming of cause and result. So within the concept of two truths, no result is achieved, which leads to the overcoming of cause and result. By engaging in a contemplation which attempts to purify and search what does not exist, and in a meditation of wonderful steps which will never arise, you will not achieve a result which is free of pursuing and rejecting. Yeah, where are the stages leading? We have to ask ourselves that at some point. Of course, in Dzogchen, you could safely say you're dealing with the 11th Bhumi and full Buddhahood. You're taking that fruit as your path, so you're not dealing with stages. But before that, in the Mahayana path, you have these 11 Bhumis and sometimes more, and you have these 9 stages of shamatha, right? Ways of abiding, and various other ox herding, you name it, different paths. But where are these stages taking us to? And we cannot take steps and stages to get to the presence, right? And so we have this little bit of a problem in the Dharma where stages are taking people away from the presence. That's why I say, in order to get anywhere, if you want to get somewhere truly in your creativity or whatever, you have to first come to the presence. Then you can get where you're going, which will always be the presence. Oh, yeah. But it's true, when you're in a settled naturalness, it's easy to come into other things from that. We want to come from a freshness. We don't want to have disgruntled, disturbed minds and then tackle our day. We don't want to have disturbed minds and then talk to our loved ones, right? So it's better to just relieve ourselves, forgive others, whatever we need to do, relieve ourselves of the worry, even if our own mind is telling us, oh, you must worry about this, because it does that. It says it's very important to be upset about this right now. You have to be upset. So if we could stop trusting that immature kind of mind so much, start to come into our okayness. We're okay. Nothing's wrong. Right? I feel like that's very difficult, even for me, I've been meditating so long, still just to feel like it's going to be okay. But we're accessing that thanks to these wonderful teachings. Okay. So therefore, the two truths do not lead to overcoming cause and result. Remember, the two truths, there's a lot here. The two truths are also a duality that we kind of impose in the Mahayana. And then, of course, in Dzogchen Mahamudra, you'll start hearing the union of the two truths. I've never really, in regards to conversations, it's great to use conventional truth and understand that we're speaking conventionally. Because any good Dharma lawyer, as I say, can come and rip your words apart and find all these fallacies and everything. And then ultimate truth should be understood as ineffable, but so should what we call conventional truth. We start seeing ineffability in conventional truth, and we start to see a very naturalness there. So you can maneuver in the world of what sentient beings call karma, but to you is luminosity then when you start to kind of wake up. Yeah, this is all just energy, luminous energy, that we're in right now. We tend to reify and solidify that. But it is a beautiful, multi-layered, multi-dimensional, ineffable, truly infinite kind of situation we got going here. For lack of better words. So, within the concept of the two truths, no result is achieved which leads to the overcoming of cause and result. By engaging in a contemplation which attempts to purify and search what does not exist, and in a meditation of wonderful steps which will never arise, you will not achieve a result which is free of pursuing and rejecting. Who contemplates the three aspects of a single purpose meditation, and who performs a step by step meditation in accord with the four practices of religious services and invoking the gods, will not achieve a result which overcomes striving and achieving, i.e., that which is totally free of activity and which acts because it is spontaneously self perfected. Because I teach the unborn, signless, selfless, you should understand the inexplicable as being free of praise and dispraise. It's good news for all you theists out there. You don't have to kiss God's butt. So, a simile for all things being the mind of perfect purity is that all things created are in their own being like the sky. This is the main point of the mind of perfect purity. Sky, wind, water, earth, and fire, these five elements come miraculously forth from the mind of perfect purity as Buddhas, the threefold world, the five paths, and the six categories of sentient beings. The apparent yet immutable Akshobhya Buddha, whose deeds are well ripened, is from the primordial, the perfect purity of the threefold world, as expressed in the form, utterance, and speech. So Akshobhya, is considered the personification of mirror-like wisdom. When our mirror-like wisdom is distorted, you can think of it this way. We have anger. Sometimes Akshobhya is put in the middle and represented in the kleshas as ignorance. So we'll see where she's going with this here, but mostly important to understand that that's dealing with the five Buddha families there, Akshobhya, and basically your wisdom. So therefore, whatever appears as animated and inanimated has consequently no place to exist except in the mind of perfect purity, like the center of the sky, which exists only in itself. Because of the vast scope of the mind of perfect purity as the actual object, Yolchen, all that appears and exists as animated and inanimated, i.e., Buddhas and sentient beings, is free of praise and dispraise, is non dual, and so far as all is the entirety of pure reality. Who does not see the mind as the vigor of non being will not achieve the goal for many aeons. The root of all things is alone the mind of perfect purity. The vigor of perfect purity from which all and everything comes forth, i.e., Buddhas and sentient beings, all that appears and exists as animated and inanimated, cannot be expressed through counting what is not even one. Oh, so it's not even one. Why? Because that's probably a conceptual construct that we apply to it and say, oh, it's all one. And by doing that, we make it two. So also the Buddha's form and utterance and the sentient being's body and speech are the mind of perfect purity, and therefore they are free of such concepts as subject and object, Sungzen. Who accomplishes freedom from such concepts as subject and object will master the root of all things, and will be known as all accomplished. Yeah, remember, it's not just the sovereign motherly Buddha who says this. Longchenpa agrees and probably um, uses the same primary sources. But here we see again freedom from concepts. So why a lot of Dzogchen has been dredged down in concepts, I don't know. Well, they've used Mahayana, also many academics and practitioners have used Mahayana to justify concepts in Dzogchen, because there are many sutras that talk about the importance of analytical and conceptual knowledge, valid cognition. Sure, but that's Mahayana. In Dzogchen, you could be illiterate, you could be a dog and still be free. Look at me. So, this is a great misconception, probably just an obscuration of kind of degenerate times, if I was to take a guess, um, that we over conceptualize. But, some of our favorite quotes in this group, right? Like page 107, page 108 from The Precious Treasury of Basic Space of Phenomenon by Longchenpa, or Dignaga says conceptualization is the opposite of awareness. It leads you further into samsara. Actually, on the second page, page 108, Longchenpa says it's the conceptualization is the antithesis of awareness. And then Dignaga, I believe, says conceptualization is the ultimate non-recognition of awareness. So very heavy statements there by the two yogis. So with joy, one will recognize an understanding of what constitutes thinking, the uniqueness of the mind of perfect purity. Right there is actually very vital information that doesn't get talked about very often. So I'm just going to elaborate. With joy, one will recognize an understanding of what you think thinking is. See, that's why we don't need to get rid of thinking. At first, it's kind of an eggshell for us that we're growing up in. But then you start to see, well, thoughts are kind of like appearances of my real mind, right? Where we get dredged down in the thinking, we tend to think that thinking is the only stuff going on. So, yeah, there we got a primary source telling you that it's okay to have thoughts. It's just they can't form a shell. Movement forms shells, right? The more it moves, the harder it gets, and we have a shell. And emotions can be like that too. And so we form shells of memories and preconceptions and all kinds of things. The idea of ourself, the imagined self, also ends up being a kind of eggshell of our own constructs then. So I teach what is beyond reckoning and duality. Reckoning, most likely a Judeo-Christian preference there, that word. But that's okay. So I have no idea what should have been there. I teach what is beyond reckoning and duality. I suppose we could say intellectualizing, probably. I teach what is beyond intellectualizing and duality, because intellectualizing typically brings us into duality and hardens our walls in duality. So, how is it that the own nature of reality is this soul mind, and that the three aspects of this own nature make the mind manifest? The three aspects of this own nature are the three best arrangements, kripa, and this is the reality of perfection. I think the maybe referencing the three kayas there. I know the three aspects of our own nature is a reference to she, so essence, nature, and compassion. So we'll continue. Now they say, where they would say this one nature, we could say this Buddha nature, although non-dual, is connected with everything. If it is put in relationship with balance, Lama, It unfolds into four aspects, the four yogas, as the objects of my teaching. I teach the one mind, permeating the five great elements, because the mind's own being is endowed with five faculties, yongtan. They are called the five great elements. If judgments regarding the existence or non existence of the one that is definitive would arise, then these many errors, obscurations, doubts, and judgmental thoughts are removed by the all creating one who transcends striving, achieving, and judgmental thought. To purge these judgments regarding existence and non existence and the resulting doubts, I establish this unerring and definitive lore because those other people cannot understand the perfect purity through suchness. In order to show you that this lore clearly deserves your faith, I teach the ultimate, which is free of striving, achieving, and deeds by means of the 10 instructions, which deserve your faith and which let you avoid deviations. So trust them. All right. And then could you go back up just for a second? So there they're referring to different ways of teaching Dzogchen. Um, but we have what's classified incorrectly as a Semdi text. This is not just a Semdi text. It has Longdi and Mengagdi. And Mengagdi is right there. No striving, no achieving. That means no Guru Yoga, no prostrations, nothing. You can jump right into Dzogchen. And it's really, it does come down to trust, and not just trusting some external thing, but trusting your previous inclinations, your stability, your own compassion. Those are the real things that we're trusting. And you're never really trusting me, although it may seem that way. For example, those who practice with me here, you're never trusting me. You're just trusting your previous experience, and you're piggybacking on what we've proven already. I don't demand any kind of blind trust. I don't think we're not in a world of blind trust anymore. It's totally, people are abusing people with blind trust and blind faith. So I think we can operate without it if you can do the mind science. And then you won't even have to depend on a Lama, a guru, anybody external, not even an external God. Then we can all have it, right? Through our own science, or our own spirituality, however you want to phrase that. So the proclamation of the 9 words of truth, which are non-existent, as to the one vigor, 9 visible objects emerge. If they are individually recognized, one speaks of the 9 words of truth. That could be a reference to the 9 vehicles again. Because in me, the all creating one, all is consummate, you should foster your understanding of the meaning of the perfect and pure mind. The roots of all things is the all creating one, the mind of perfect purity. Whatever appears is my actuation, whatever comes into existence is my wonder. Whatever sounds and words arise, all arise as sounds and words of my intrinsic being. The Buddha's form, wisdom, and qualities, and the sentient being's body, karmic inheritance, bachak, etc. What appears and exists as animated and inanimated, this altogether is from the primordial the actuation of the mind of perfect purity. With the exception of the mind, from me all excuse me. With the exception of the mind, from me all things have come forth. Because why does she say that? Because mind can't come forth. Mind is always there. She is mind. So the previous Buddhas did not teach these sacred instructions now given by me, the all creating sovereign, and the presently residing, and the future Buddhas will not teach these sacred instructions of the perfect purity, the all creating sovereign. Such she spoke. This is the 6th chapter of the all creating sovereign, mind of perfect purity, in which the soul root of the universe is discussed. Great. The soul root of the universe. And we can end it there. Thank you so much, Yeshi. Um, yeah, it's basically saying this. This can't really be taught. It can only kind of be pointed to and ushered in, where it says the Buddhas of the past, present, and future can't teach it. Okay, thank you everybody once again for your participation. Even your presence helps keep the Dharma alive. Uh, like the people commenting and supporting the YouTube channel too. Your presence, your practice, your involvement in this mandala does, I feel like, help keep it alive. So thank you for that. And I probably wouldn't even be sitting here right now if I didn't hear people telling me pretty much on a daily basis that this awareness practice helps them, is benefiting them. Because my self-doubt is so heavy, actually, that I would actually talk my way out of it and say, you know what, the group is better off doing some other stuff, explore some other teachings or something like that. And I really cannot look anybody in the eyes as a hypocrite. So it has to work. Otherwise, I can't even talk about it. I wouldn't even talk about it unless there's some benefit here. And so, of course, I value your friendship so much in our interactions and when we get to hang out. But really, the fact that it's benefiting our lives even in a small way. We live in pretty turbulent times, I would say, conventionally, and finding a little bit of freedom in your mind is so precious. That means that you're nicer to people, you're nicer to animals, and that trickles and that spreads, and nicer to yourself, nicer all the way around. Then.